Well, the hour being 7 o'clock on Monday, January 25th, 2021, I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council meeting. Prior to starting our meeting, I will read the introduction for electronic meetings. As mayor of the Laconia City Council, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. This evening, we are utilizing the Zoom platform for this electronic meeting. All members have the ability to communicate during this meeting through the Zoom platform, and the public has access to watch the live YouTube video at www.youtube.com/LaconiaNH. Listen to this meeting through dialing the following phone number, 1-301-715-8592, or participate by the Zoom app. Webinar ID 815-1773-5443, password 683048. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and instructions are provided on the City of Laconia's website at www.laconianh.gov. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 527-1265, extension 243, or email at cityclerk@laconianh.gov. And D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and have it rescheduled at that time. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states his presence, also please state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I'd ask the city clerk right now to call the roll.
Councilor Cheney.
I'm home and alone.
Councilor Susie.
Home and alone.
Councilor Littman.
I'm home, alone in the room that I'm in. There's my daughter's upstairs.
Thank you. Councilor Haynes.
Here at council chambers and alone.
Councilor Hamel.
Here and alone.
Councilor Felch.
At home and alone.
Mayor Hosmer.
Home and alone in this room that I'm conducting the meeting from. So before we go any farther, I would ask Councilor Cheney if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilor Cheney. Our recording secretary tonight is City Clerk Cheryl Hebert. Also joining us tonight, City Manager Scott Myers, as well as helping us on the IT end of things is Finance Director Glenn Smith. Moving along to item number 7 on our agenda. This is the the regular meeting minutes of January 11th, 2021. Minutes of the meeting were distributed to the City Council on Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. With no changes or corrections submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. Moving on to item number 8. Under consent and action items, This topic is the temporary traffic order 2021-01, the Laconia Little League Parade. A request for a temporary traffic order for the Laconia Little League Parade on Saturday, April 24th, 2021, from 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. has been received. As we know, this is a recurring request and there'll be no changes from previous years. Hopefully this year we will have one. Last year we didn't have one because of the pandemic. So right now I'd be looking for a motion to approve the temporary traffic order 2021-01 for the Laconia Little League Parade to be held on April 24th, 2021 from 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. So made by Councilor Felch and seconded by Councilor Susie. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Keating,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Thank you very much, councilors. And I'm already looking forward to throwing out the first pitch of the Little League season. So that and the background behind me gets me thinking about warmer days, and that's good. So moving on to moving on to number 9. I almost skipped right over it. My apologies. On our agenda, this is the opportunity for citizens to comment for matters not on the agenda. So if there are citizens listening, watching this evening, and they have some comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda, now would be the appropriate time to let us know. And I'll wait on your cue, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor, nobody has raised their hand.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving along to item number 13 on our agenda. This is the public hearing for resolution 2021-01 relative to the establishment of a Weirs Community Park House Special Revenue Fund. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the January 13th, 2021 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at Laconia City Hall, Laconia Public Library, Laconia Community Center, and the SAU. Under section 47:1-C, a special revenue fund can be established for the sole purpose of the maintenance and operation of the park house and the Weirs Community Park itself for monies earned from the park house rentals, fundraisers, donations, and parking lot fees. This report was submitted by Amy Lovisek, the Director of Recreation and Facilities. After opening the public hearing and closing the public hearing, we will take this item up under unfinished business later on in the meeting. So at 7:08 p.m. on January 25th, 2021, I'd like to open the public hearing. And Mr. Smith, I'll wait on your cue if anyone would like to speak.
Mayor, nobody has raised their hand.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:09 p.m. Again, this will be taken up further in unfinished business. Moving along to item number 14 right now, I would like to make an adjustment to our agenda this evening, and this would be the opportunity for County Commissioner Peter Spanos to make a presentation this evening, or perhaps be in a position to answer some questions in regards to the county budget. So Commissioner Spanos, Chairman Spanos, I should say, I think this is the first time you've joined us since you've been elected. Congratulations on your election to the County Commission. I'm glad you could join us this evening, and happy to learn a few things about what's going on at the county level.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for inviting me. I know that the county administrator has furnished you with a copy of the budget with the line items. I don't know to what extent you've been able, all of you, to peruse through them, but I will give you the essence of what will be taking place tomorrow night when the Board of Commissioners go before the full Belknap County delegation. The budget submitted by the Board of Commissioners last year was cut over these last few weeks by the Executive Committee. As you know, the Executive Committee is comprised of 5 of the senior members of the delegation. It's an 18-member delegation, so they're going to present justification for the cuts they made to the county budget tomorrow evening and possibly into Wednesday. And I hope you'll be available if you have the time to listen in on that. So where we're at with the Board of Commissioners and the way we're approaching the full delegation tomorrow evening is of the $1.7 million that was slashed from the budget as submitted by the Board of Commissioners. The board is asking that $444,000 of that being reinstated forthwith to prevent shortfalls in the budget going forward, and the necessity of supplemental requests throughout the period of the year. Of considerable concern to the board are the cuts made to the nursing home, particularly in the area of food service, to the tune of $150,000. We are going to ask that this piece and many others be added back tomorrow evening. I know that we don't have the time to go through every line item on what is there and what we feel should be there or shouldn't be there, but at this point, I'm guessing some of you have a few specific questions, and I'm here and Deb is here to answer them if we can.
Chairman Spanos, thank you very much. And I think for just to go over and welcome Deb Shackett, County Administrator, as well. So, and thank you for the work that you do at the county as well, Deb, we appreciate it. Just to review, and this question has come up as a result of an email or two that we've received, concerns that when the county budget increase is requested, as it was, that there would be a 12% increase in the city budget. That is not the case, as the city manager let us know over the past couple of weeks when talking about this. The county allocation in the city budget is just a line item that needs to be worked into the city budget. It doesn't reflect necessarily in any kind of increase in spending or an increase in taxes at the city level. So a 12% increase, as it was earlier, would not result in a 12% increase in city spending. Naturally, we're bound by the tax cap as well. So for the public not understanding that, my only concern, and I'll turn it over to the fellow councilors in just a moment, is that, and Commissioner Spanos, I appreciate the fact that you're looking to return $440,000 back into the county budget, particularly as it pertains to the county nursing home. I really do appreciate that, to the extent that, and I think you know and you share this concern, these are some of our most vulnerable citizens in the community. That, you know, this is we have a nursing home that we can be proud of. They've put in extraordinary efforts, certainly during the pandemic, and even in a non-pandemic time, having visited there a number of times, I can attest to the quality of the work that they do there and the care that they give people. You know, I don't think anyone on this council sits here and says we should have an increase in any kind of taxes or fees necessarily, but certainly when it comes to the care of our most vulnerable, like our senior citizens that you're caring for there in the nursing home, really their needs must be prioritized. And I know you and I share those concerns, and I appreciate the work that you do in trying to balance a budget and have a responsible budget as well. But I just wanted to share with you my concerns about their care and their quality of life and the quality of the people that are serving them there at the nursing home. So I will look to the fellow counselors here right now. Counselor Hamel, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for both for coming tonight and joining us for this meeting. I guess, Peter, one of my questions is what you just stated on the cutback to the nursing home. And I guess specifically, you're saying the food services. I believe that's a contracted service now. If I'm wrong, let me know. But if that is a contracted service, what are they exactly going to be cutting from that?
Thank you for the question, Counselor. And they're looking to cut a portion of the contract for food service based on the fact that enrollment to the county home has been reduced owing to the pandemic. But after speaking with Shelley Richardson, who is the director of the county home, and by the way, has done yeoman's work and keeping COVID out of that building almost until the very end of where we're at now. She deserves to be commended. I don't know how she did it. But the reasoning, I believe, on the part of the executive committee, and I can't speak for the full delegation until tomorrow, is that if there are 64 residents now, when there are normally 96, they shouldn't be consuming as much food. The problem with that reasoning, Counselor, in my opinion, is that Ms. Richardson expects, with the vaccination taking place now, that she could be back up to full population by early to mid-May, in which case we run into that problem with the budget shortfall and emergency appropriations. And if you permit me, Counselor, I just want to go back to something, touch on something that the mayor spoke of a few minutes ago. I think you all know I'm not necessarily a champion of higher taxes. I don't think any of us are. But it should be noted that if the delegation or if the executive committee had accepted the full $31.9 million budgets submitted by the Board of Commissioners, yes, it would have resulted in a tax increase to the county. But to a Belknap County resident who owns a $250,000 home, that increase would have been $36. I'm not saying I wouldn't like to have that $36 in my pocket, but I am saying any tax increase passed along would be substantially less than that. And when it comes to the care of those most vulnerable in our population, I'm certainly willing to absorb it. And, I think we're all of the same generation. And at some point, we may all be living in a nursing home, if not that one, perhaps another one. And I know I would want and expect the best of care after being a member of society producing here for many, many years. So I just wanted to get that number out to you because you'll be hearing a lot about higher taxes. Well, that's true with the full budget accepted. But again, the numbers are this. A $250,000 homeowner would pay on a $31.9 million county budget, $36 in additional taxes. That's the fact. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Spanos. I appreciate your answer.
I just want to make one correction, Peter. I don't mean to step on your toes, but Ms. Shackett is from a generation behind us. Okay,
Oh.
she's not.
Deb, I'm sorry. You're well behind me anyway. I stand corrected, Mayor. Thank you.
Go right ahead. Counselor Susie, sorry about that.
Thank you. Commissioner Spanos, thank you very much for coming. And Deborah, thank you very much for coming. Here's my question. It's more maybe general. But if the budget that was slashed 1.7 million, and then the money is put back into the nursing home, the $447,000 you requested, what happens then? What is the appropriation that goes to the city of Laconia? Because we only have so much money based upon the tax cap rules.
A good question. Thank you for it, Counselor. Well, in fairness, I will acknowledge that the budget that was accepted last year by the delegation, of which I was a member on, was $30.2 million. And Deb, I believe 1.6 million of that was unspent. Yeah, she's nodding, yes.
Yes.
So what that means is while it wouldn't kick back to the expenses of Laconia's budget per se, it would go into the fund balance. And presently the present fund balance today is $6 million. and that is unspent, and it is good to have that cushion there. But going forward, what we are trying to do is to avoid constantly meeting with the executive committee, requesting more funding when we fall short along different line items. If we can add back the $444,000, that may preclude it. And at the very worst, we may have to come back 2 or 3 times during the year with the budget request before the executive committee.
Are you saying the 6 million, the 6
Go
million,
ahead.
the $6 million is unspent funds or unallocated money?
That's accumulated. That's the present fund balance. The executive committee has also proposed using $3 million of that fund balance to give the county taxpayers a 12% tax cut, which, Deb, if you can check my arithmetic, is probably somewhere in the vicinity of that $36 I spoke of.
I can agree. I'm not sure I got all that, but if the $36 per household on average, that'd be throughout the entire county, would be impacted by 12% tax increase, or the 12% tax increase would equalize about $36 on a $250,000 home.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my question comes, maybe get more particular. We're probably going to end up being held to about a 1.2% CPI increase. I think, Scott, if I'm correct, because we're bound by the tax cap. So what I'm trying to get down to is what would be the number that would be increased from last year to this year, if any, if your proposal goes through the way you're projecting right now?
I believe that if, even with the $440,000 add back, it would result in, and rather than use the 3 million of the fund balance, use 2 million instead, which is what the commissioners proposed, that would result in a 1% tax increase for the county taxpayers.
Decrease.
And no additional tax levy against the city. Can you check me on that, Deborah, please?
It would be a 1% decrease.
Decrease, yes.
From last year?
Yes.
If we use 2 million of the fund balance rather than the 3. And it's the opinion of the Board of Commissioners that the 3 million in usage of the fund balance is a little bit of a too deep of a slash in our safety net.
Okay. Okay. One other question, if I may, the other councilors. What is some of the other counties, especially around us, whether it's Coos or those things, what do they run for fund balances?
They're all over the place. It's hard to compare or get anything out of it. Some don't have any, and they just raise taxes when they need more. And some have bigger than we have. The commissioners about a year or two ago created a fund balance policy that said they want to keep between $3.5 and $5 million on hand based on our operating expense requirements and and trying to limit how much we have to borrow in anticipation of taxes every year. So right now we're just at about 6 million. So using 2 million and assuming we'll have a little to add back again next year, we should end up right in that range, somewhere between 4 and 5 million. If we use 3 million right now, then we're just concerned that starts to cause us some concern. If we had to have a supplemental appropriation because we ran out of money for the nursing home or something else, we would look to the undesignated fund balance to offset that, so we're not having to raise taxes. So we're trying to keep that money in the undesignated fund balance. So I think the commissioners feel more comfortable using 2 million and not 3 million. Either way, there's likely going to be a tax decrease.
Okay, so just to wrap up one thing, if you go ahead and accept your proposal, Commissioner Spanos and Deborah, that would put the 447 back in, which I think is a good idea. But the other cuts were taken forward and use $2 million of the general, or the fund balance. The city of Laconia could see a 1% decrease.
Exactly right.
Okay.
And that 444,000, we do consider to be essential. And I just wanted to make one other point, Counselor. Historically, and you may know this, Belknap County runs at the top or near the top on fiscal efficiency historically against the other 9 counties.
I totally agree, and I've seen it before, and I commend you, well, especially commend Deborah, because she's the youngster of the crowd here, bringing forth everything. Oh, excuse me, with Cheryl.
That's right.
Thank you.
Cheryl.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Henry, are you looking to speak? I see you're not on mute.
I didn't have any question that wasn't already covered. Appreciate both Deborah and the commissioner's work to make it work for everybody. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Oh, Councilor Hammond.
Yeah, just one quick question, Commissioner and Deb. Is there anything else in the budget that's been cut dramatically that we should know about that might have to be added back in or might affect services?
Counselor, thank you. There are some cuts we've been addressing, corrections, but because of that particular department, I'm not sure it falls under the totally essential category you stated. Deborah?
The list that makes up that 445,000 that the commissioners are planning to ask the delegation to put back in. I was just quickly looking. There's about 100,000 that is in corrections, and the biggest part of that is because they actually cut into the current staffing, so we would have to lay people off. I'm not sure they made that cut intentionally for that reason, but that's the impact it would have. And, we've already talked about the nursing home is probably looks like closer to 170,000 there. The rest are smaller, but they're all itemized. We provided an exact explanation of how much we thought we needed back and why. I don't think there's anything extravagant in there, and they're all known increases, things we know we are going to incur.
Okay, thank you. Just another question. Gunstock ski area, what does that usually provide back to the county? I know it's probably different in every year, but what's kind of the average that it brings back to the county itself?
Well, I say we, when I was on the delegation, the county always lends Gunstock money, and they've done that since I've been involved in the process and well before that. And Gunstock has unfailingly paid back the county. They do. We do provide the tax anticipation note to Gunstock, but we always get the money back. And I have no recollection ever of Gunstock falling short on its commitment in paying back the county to whatever monies they may owe. And I would see that this year going forward, despite the pandemic, despite the present lack of snow, I don't see that equation changing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilor Susie.
Just one last question. I know in the reverse of this, we're talking about revenues. And looking forward, it's been a tough year, as we all know. What have you, when your outlook for revenues for the coming year, how much of an increase have you seen, or are you projecting in revenues?
Deb will answer that probably more accurately than me. I know in my conversation with Deborah, I think revenues are down a little bit, but not as much as feared. And that is the same, fortunately, trend we've been seeing in Concord, where revenue has been down because of the virus, but not to the extent that we initially feared. Deborah?
You're exactly right about that. Our revenues are down because our nursing home population is down. We can't take new admissions. The Department of Corrections numbers are down considerably right now. But we are hopeful, not so much with the jail, but with the nursing home, that those numbers are going to are going to go back up. So the revenues are less. That's one of the significant drivers of that 12% increase we initially sent around, is because of our loss of revenue. But we received about $1 million in federal aid through the CARES Act and other things due to the pandemic. So that really helped us come in with a pretty good budget this year, 2020, I mean. And for next year, we're not expecting that we're going to get a lot of money from the federal government because of COVID. Hopefully it's going to wrap up and things will get back to normal soon here. So we're not projecting that we're going to get revenues there, and we are projecting that we'll be able to take more residents in the nursing home and sort of get back to normal. So their revenues are down a little for 2021, but not, it's not a crushing blow like some places I've heard about.
Thank you very much.
As a little follow-up on that, Deb, I spent part of this afternoon on the phone with Congressman Pappas to talk about what the next CARES Act looks like, and will there be money that will go to municipalities, specifically earmarked for municipalities. We know there's been some hiccups along the way and what was intended and what actually came through. So the idea of making sure to offset any loss in revenues perhaps associated with a drop of enrollment or census, as well as tax revenue. We had a very good discussion. He certainly is aware of it and certainly is a priority of his. Where it ends up after it passes through the Senate and reconciliation, I don't know, but he's aware of it, and I'd encourage you to reach out to him and make sure those concerns he's aware of your concerns as well.
We're meeting with him, I think, tomorrow on a meeting.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So he'll hear it from you as well. All right. Any other comments or questions for Deb or Commissioner Spanos? Seeing none, again, thank you both very much for your work and your assistance. We look forward to perhaps having another conversation in the coming weeks or months as things develop. You're on mute, Peter.
You're mute, Peter.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councilors. Very nice seeing everyone. I trust you're all in good health, and I hope you'll be able to tune in tomorrow night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye now.
Moving along to item number 14A, but it's really 14B, which is a follow-up on the Timberman / Ironman discussion we had 2 weeks ago with Audra Tassone Indec. I believe, Audra, you have supplied city manager, myself, and the council with an updated document, and I know you'd like to perhaps go over that if you're with us. And Mr. Smith, if you see her there, if we could upgrade her to a panelist position. Looks like you're there, Audra.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Terrific. Welcome. Nice to have you. I just wanted to follow up on, give you an opportunity to follow up on your presentation of a couple of weeks ago and perhaps go over the document you've shared with us.
Sure, absolutely. I also, Mayor, I want to introduce Scott Langen, who is on the call also. He's one of the regional directors for Ironman, and he will be working closely with me on this project.
Hello, Scott. Welcome.
Yep. Scott, you're muted.
I think Glenn is in the process of promoting him, so there we go.
Okay, there you go. Perfect.
Terrific. So we're ready when you are.
Okay. So as you know, we've been in discussions about having Timberman come this August 2020. And I know there were some questions in regards to what we're asking from the city. So after talking to the city manager, to Scott, and to the mayor, which you should have in front of you what we're asking from the city. And I would like to go through it with all of you if you have any questions on it. Basically, we're looking for cash, but we can work around that, and Scott can speak more to that. and then some in-kind services, police, the venues, waste management, some message boards. DOT.
Okay, so Audra, if I could, you and Scott, if I can walk you through this just to clarify. The deck that was presented a couple weeks ago was a high-level, all-encompassing deck, which was perhaps similar to a presentation you might do in a very large urban area like Chattanooga or a place like that, correct?
Correct.
This is a significantly smaller, as far as participant-wise, anticipated event of maybe upwards of 2,000 professional women, 2,000 men, or 2,000 men and 2,000 women. So a total of 4,000 people that you would anticipate coming to Timberman and Laconia.
Correct.
Ironman,
Absolutely.
excuse me.
Yeah.
So the idea that of what you presented really didn't reflect what your requests of the city of Laconia or surrounding areas would be. That's just sort of a typical ask when you go into a larger, an area with a bigger demographic and perhaps more access to public funds to invest in these types of things.
And that is correct. So that is an example of what other markets have given us. But again, that's, we go into each market and we pick and choose what can and cannot be done.
Okay, so in looking through this now, this is tailored specifically for the city of Laconia. We don't have to be concerned about hotel rooms and making sure that we provide you with thousands of volunteers right now. But what you are asking for is the city to assist with, certainly with $15,000 cash upfront, police services with a CERT team. You would ask that the Timberman not pay any venue fees for, which would include the expo, the registration, transition, finish line, supply location. So in this instance, you would not be supplying any fees. You would not be paying any fees associated with the use of O-Pee-Chee Park, the Laconia Middle School, and maybe some of the parking lots throughout the city that may be required.
Correct. That is absolutely correct.
Okay. And you're looking for the city to provide one EMS unit. So you would be looking for an ambulance staffed with 2 people for the duration of the event. Now, is this a 1-day or 2-day event you're thinking about?
We would like to do 2 days.
Okay. So you would want an EMS unit on a Saturday and an EMS unit on a Sunday.
Correct.
Okay. And you would also give me some sense of what you would need from waste management services. So, I think dumpsters are easy enough in some respects. They're not inexpensive, but dumpsters set up somewhere around the finish line and maybe the expo areas. Is that right?
That is correct. And over by the supply area. And then we would just need containers placed throughout the venue. And then the possibility of having some workers to assist with cleanup.
Those could be, now those workers and assisting in cleanup, those could be part of the volunteer staff perhaps?
They could, and we would give them a donation for helping.
Okay. Could it also be, and I'm not trying to be facetious, could it also be people who do some form of work release out of the county jail?
Oh, absolutely. That's not a problem whatsoever.
Okay. And on an event this size, approximately what would you need as far as dumpsters? In other words, are you looking for 2 or 3 yard dumpsters, a 10-yard dumpster? What is it and how many?
We would need a total of 3 dumpsters, and they're between 15 and 20 yards.
And I see you use the waste management services. Do you have a contract where where it has to be with waste management, or if the city has a relationship with another waste management company, maybe somebody that's locally based, would that be a problem if it got to that point?
Not, it would be fine.
And how many message boards are you looking for here?
We probably would need a total of, I would say around 6, but if the city was could only supply 1 or 2, then we would rent the additional ones from United Rentals.
Okay, so this would also include, just to refresh everyone's recollection, the closing of the main street at some point for the finish of the event. Also require maybe some of our bike routes and our running routes to go through parts of the city, including the WOW Trail, and maybe a portion of either the bike ride or the run along Shore Drive in Laconia. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, so Scott, I know you're with us there. If I'm trying to get my arms around a bit here and about the cost associated with waste message boards, venue, and the one ambulance for 2 days, and perhaps some police services throughout the city. Can you maybe shed a little bit of light on that?
You're asking that of me or Scott Langen?
I'm so sorry. Yeah, Scott Myers. Yeah.
Okay. So some rough numbers. I mean, to rent the dumpsters, it'd be a tipping fee. We could certainly waive the tipping fee at our transfer station. You know, we would ultimately pay for the tonnage that we brought down to the incinerator at Pennacook. So I think the dumpsters would be minimal cost. You know, setting up some of the the barrels and stuff in advance, no different than we do for Pumpkin Fest or Motorcycle Week. Some of that is set up with regular staff time on the Monday through Friday basis. If we did have some staff there to help assist and oversee volunteers, which I certainly would recommend, there'd be some overtime cost on the Saturday and Sunday. To have the ambulance, I'd work with Audra and Scott to know when they expect the bikers to come into Opeechee and transition to the run, because as my understanding is, we would be having the ambulance for basically that component of when riders came into Laconia, did the running loop, and then finished. So it wouldn't necessarily be from the beginning of the day over at Elacoya for the swim, is my understanding. So you could figure, a paramedic, possibly 2, or a paramedic and an EMTA, overtime rates, depending on where they are in seniority and that type of stuff, might be running in the area of, $45 to $50 an hour, times 2 people, times, the number of hours that we would need them per day. So that would be relatively simple. And speaking with Audra, I think she indicates here that if that ambulance needed to respond to an incident on the race scene, it would be dedicated to sit there for the race only. If it responded to an incident on the race scene, it would be up to Ironman to be engaging the services of maybe a private carrier to come in and backfill if that's what they chose to do. Police, we'd have to get into the number of police in conjunction with the CERT team without having worked through all the logistics of the course and what would be considered major intersections where you would definitely want a police officer versus some secondary areas where a couple of trained members from our CERT team could certainly, assist and handle it. No different than when the sled dogs cross certain streets and stuff. Some cases we have a police cruiser, some cases we have members of the CERT team. So once we worked through that, that would kind of determine the same thing about how many officers would be needed at key areas. We aren't looking at this as being a rowdy or a rambunctious crowd, especially when they finished 73 miles of a course. So we think family friendly. So the number of officers needed necessarily in the downtown or possibly over at Opeechee for crowd control issues, we certainly would expect to be minimal in that sense. It would be more just to ensure safety, that we get runners and participants, out of the downtown, out of the Veterans Square, get them on sidewalks and get them heading back up, back to Opeechee type of thing. So I would want to defer to the chief, and we didn't get too much into the weeds, but again, depending on officers and their seniority and rate of pay, you might be looking at, a $45 to $50 an hour per officer. And then hopefully the CERT team, they train, they do a great job. They assist us on a lot of things. And I think having an opportunity to assist on a nice weekend day in August is certainly a whole lot better than getting called out in the middle of the night for an emergency in February. So I think they would be more than willing to help us out there. I think we have 2 message boards that the city owns at this point. When I say I think we just got a second one in the past several months through a grant. So I believe we've got 2 that are available for us or from us.
All right. I'd like to open this up to other counselors and get thoughts, questions, feedback, reservations, if you would. I think just the reason I'm asking now to get that, because I think your Ironman is in a position where if the city were to agree, it's something that needs to be rolled out sometime within the next few weeks. It's registration opening up, correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right. So Councilor Susie, I see your hand. Go right ahead. You're on mute. There you go.
Audra and Scott, thank you very much. Couple of questions. The 4,000 men and women, those are participants?
Correct. Those are
Okay.
participants.
So, and I'm not trying to, I know last time we talked, you were looking for hotel rooms. So where do they plan on staying?
They will still stay anywhere from southern New Hampshire up through the Lakes region.
Okay. And then when you mentioned in your thing that parking and staging, like the industrial park, okay? That's all really private property other than the roads itself. So we'd have no control over that. You'd have to go back to each of the companies that have their own situations up there to be able to use it. I saw that in the note. That's why I brought that up. Okay.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I would reach out to each company on an individual and talk it through with them.
Okay. And then, okay, the other thing is that liability, and I guess this question is more to Scott, our city manager. Is there so many specific liability situations we have to take care of this from the insurance rolls?
Absolutely, and I would believe that Ironman has some indemnification for communities as well as their participants. So we would certainly review their language with our commercial carrier, which is Primex, and make sure that we are all on the same page and that the city is not unduly exposed.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then my last one, and Scott also might come back to you on maybe Mr. Mayor, some help on this. All these people come to Laconia, same thing at the Weirs, and I think it's great. I mean, I think this is fantastic because it's not just the participants, but it's all the people that some of their families going to come, some friends. It's going to be a lot of people. They spend a lot of money here, but we get no return. The state takes all the rooms and meals taxes, and we get nothing, just like Bike Week or anything else like that. And I just want to bring that up. And I know that you mentioned it in your paper, that part of your municipality's discussion. And it's just another thing. I think the state really wants us to do something like this, but I think they should have some skin in the game. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Susie. Go right ahead, Scott.
Yeah, so big picture, I agree. If you go to some larger cities, Councilor Susie, you notice on your hotel room or on your restaurant tab, there is a local tax option. New Hampshire does not have that. We do get a distribution of rooms and meals tax that the state collects on a formula basis. So right now, the state, I won't get on my soapbox, but the state is supposed to be distributing 40% of rooms and meals of what they collect. They're currently distributing around 22%, but we do get a share of that. The same with the gas tax. That's statutorily, 12% is returned out of the gas tax to the local levels. So you're right, it doesn't necessarily come back to Laconia specific where it's generated, but it never does. So when you think about it in terms of lodging and restaurants, there's donor towns. Think of Portsmouth or Hampton or Laconia or Concord or some of the ski resorts, North Conway. They're definitely donor towns into the system, but that's how it's been set up for years. I do think this, certainly would support businesses in the area, especially after a struggling season, and maybe infuse some more visitors into it. I don't recall the exact amount, but maybe someone on the council does, but the state does contribute money towards Motorcycle Week and advertising and supporting that as a large statewide economic engine. And I think the mayor mentioned in the past meetings that Commissioner Caswell from the Economic Development Division was on one of our calls and certainly is supportive of this from the state. And it certainly could be an ask of, or how can the state support this as well in terms of some of these dollars so we can bring. So you can't always measure everything directly as to what will stay in Laconia, but certainly Laconia, the region, it could be a nice shot in the arm, and in a roundabout way, some of those funds will come back to us.
Okay, now my question had to do with that 22% compared to the 40% they're supposed to be giving us. That's where I was going.
Yeah, we would need to talk to our legislators about that. That's not a question for me or Iron Man tonight.
Right. I'm just getting it out, so maybe Mr. Mortensen might bring it up.
So, Councilor Susi, I think you raise you raise a really good point because there, and I think Iron Man has to understand this as well, and I think that they do, because we don't have a separate city tax on our hotel rooms or on meals, and we don't have, we can't do a cost benefit analysis so easily and saying, well, geez, if we fill up 300 rooms a night over the course of 3 nights, then we can figure out what we can take from that as a city tax or fee. We don't have that ability. So in some respects, it's looking at a more holistic view, as Scott just mentioned, what's in it for the businesses and the people in the city who pay their property taxes and are coming out of a couple of lean seasons. So.
Right. And we did have support from about 10 of the local merchants who, said nothing but positive things about Timberman. Unfortunately, and I apologize, I didn't have time to go to everyone, but I do have a list of people who support the event.
Did you meet with the Chamber of Commerce as well?
I did, and the Chamber supports the event also.
Any, looking at other councilors here, any other feedback? Yes, Councilor Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand the use of the Peachy Park and the track area and all that, but would that close the park itself to the public? Well, the reason I'm asking, that is in the middle of August, and there's people that are probably going to want to use the beach.
Sure. It would close it on the race days for that weekend, but leading up to it, as we're building out the site, we can leave it open so there's access to it. We can definitely work around that. I did something very similar with Eloquia.
Okay.
And I think, Councilor, though, the beach, we could make available the beach out at the point for people who are truly going to the beach and not using the grounds or the track or that type of stuff. I think we could carve out a distinction there, because you're right, it is August. And I know that Amy Levisik, our recreation director, did reach out to the youth soccer group that I think has that field penciled in for maybe Friday and Saturday of that weekend. And they're more than willing to work around and reschedule or move to different fields, maybe over at Levitt Park or somewhere else. So, but for the beach itself in August, yes, we can find a way to make that work.
Okay, thanks.
Scott Langen, would you like to discuss about the volunteer give back? What we talked about with the foundation?
That's another aspect of this event that's makes the event really great for the community. With the volunteers that we need in order to host the event, we're going to give back approximately $20,000 to organizations that'll be, assisting with different roles throughout the event. Additionally, we've earmarked another $10,000 to go back to groups within the city. So there's about $30,000 that we're looking at giving back to your city.
And Scott, how would the city be able to quantify that? What type of report would the city council or city manager expect to get from Iron Man?
So at the end of the event, we would give you a deck from the foundation that would have bits and pieces about the event, some photos of the event, and then it would have a bunch of the volunteer organizations that were a part of the event. So we provide that post race, hand that to you all, and you guys can see which organizations were felt from having the event.
Counselor Cheney, I see that you have turned your microphone on. Were you looking to say something?
I was, Mayor. I was wondering, it seems to me that I would like to see an estimate. I mean, and I know it's not easy, but 15,000 plus 2 ambulance operators at roughly $50 an hour times so many hours, half a dozen or whatever it is, dumpsters. And oh, that's not really too expensive, I understand. And the message boards and their use in police officers' services, I just would like to see a little closer number to what this is actually going to set us back. And I know it's not easy, but it seems like a educated guess would make me feel a lot better. Thank you.
Counselor Hamel. Thank you, Counselor Cheney.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Counselor Cheney and Counselor Susie on this. I too would like to see more of a definite cost estimate on this. When you're looking to put 1 ambulance there with 2 people, and we're in August, which is, all the tourists are here. It's a busy month for them. I can't imagine that ambulance is going to be there very long before it has to get called out. If you dedicate it to that, then that kind of puts a squeeze on, providing EMS services for the rest of the city. And so, to me, that has to be talked about a whole lot more. Also, as far as police, I'm wondering if the Ironman organization can get a hold of the state and ask if state police could help with this also. There again, it's a busy time of the year, and our police are very, very busy also. And where in the long run, it's going to benefit the whole state, probably more than it is Laconia. It will be great of what influx will be here. But here again, it's like what, Councilor Susie said, it's like a motorcycle week that the whole state enjoys, but the city of Laconia is the one who has to foot the bill for it. I know there's tax revenues and all that kind of stuff, but for a long time, the city has spent this, and people who are not involved end up paying for it. So I'd like to see those a better cost estimate on what this would be, whether or not the state police would be interested, or the government could ask if they could participate in this, and also, what we would do with the EMS, because like I said, 1 ambulance for the 4,000 people, that's an awful lot. So that's kind of my concerns.
Sure, absolutely.
Counselor Susie.
Just one last question. I know we're gonna have a lot of people, participants, but I'm thinking about all the other people that come along. The nonprofits that are in our city, schools or this and that, are they gonna be allowed, or is this something they can set up their little tents and sell water or snacks and all that kind of other stuff? I'm just wondering, or do you prevent that to keep that under the Ironman control? Because I can assume, there's no doubt we're going to be asked.
Sure. We have made exceptions where some of our organizations have gone out there and sold water, hamburgers, hot dogs. So that, from my end, that would be a non-issue. Scott, if you want to speak more to it.
Yeah, I think from the nonprofit type entity, we can discuss what that looks like. Generally speaking, we have national level partners that come on in. There's an expo for the athletes. We can see what that looks like, and we can dive into that a little bit further. The way that the nonprofits are going to be positively affected by this is by coming out and and helping out the event. And then from that, there's a $20,000 give back that'll go directly to those nonprofits, depending on the level of involvement that they have. Additionally, what we were talking about was a $10,000 grant that can go to maybe 2 or 3 organizations within town. So now 1 organization gets a larger check. So the way that we like to, work with nonprofits, rather than have them come on out and work a table and sell water or do something along those lines, come be part of the organizing committee, and we'll help you out for your time and make sure that your organization is felt positively.
Audra, have you had any conversations with the Bank of New Hampshire?
I have. I've spoken to Mike Seymour, and they're behind it 100%. So it looks like potentially they want to get very involved in regards to sponsorship.
So I guess the question is, and I'm not there yet. Mayor Engler always said, and when any good idea comes with a price tag on it, we've got to figure out how do we pay for it? Where's the money come from? And is there any precedent of this type that you're aware of, Scott? So two-part question for Scott Myers.
I think the city, in addition to whatever hard expense we'll refer to it as on the weekend, is certainly going to be involved in a lot of soft expense in the planning stages. So through technical review, having those types of meetings and discussions to plan for it. But that's really no different than what staff does on soft costs as part of their, say, Monday through Friday regular schedule for planning the Pumpkin Festival or planning Motorcycle Week or planning, any other events that may happen as part of their duties, and we fit that in. Motorcycle Week, we estimate revenues and we estimate expenses, and then depending on how the weather turns out or the number of vendors, sometimes we hit it, sometimes we're off. With a Pumpkin Fest, we basically had an agreement with the chamber that they picked up, the hard cost of services on the weekend date, and again, we picked up some soft costs leading up to it, but we turned that over to the chamber and let them go out and book vendors and charge for those spaces, and they kind of took the risk reward on there. But again, even though we got reimbursed hard costs, plenty of soft costs and staff time go into that. So there is some precedent in the soft costs, maybe not as much in this aspect of the hard cost. But again, I know it's been the goal of the council to be looking to encourage family-friendly events and look to attract, buck the trend of New Hampshire's getting older and grayer. What are we going to do to think outside the box a little bit and attract, younger, affluent people who may come back here and vacation because they had a great experience here. And I know Audra and Scott shared some of the demographics of people and how many states they come from and how much they spend while they're here for several days and how many family members come into the region. And I think you hear from Motorcycle Week Association, people might come up for Motorcycle Week, but they come back a year later and stay for a week in September type of thing. So you don't know all the benefits that are going to come. So a little bit of precedent, probably not quite to this level, at least in my time here though, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Lippman.
I think it might be helpful for the council to have a not to exceed number, in which then asked Scott Scott, if you will, the manager, how we would propose to fund it. I think the benefit of supporting the businesses who pay property taxes, they do better. They're more able to pay their property taxes and support city services. So I'm not adverse to it, but I want to know what it is and how we're going to fund it, which I think is the same thing everybody else has been asking. I think we just need a concrete not to exceed, and then we need to figure out, this is going to fall in our 2022 budget, and we haven't even started tackling that yet. And we know that's going to be a bit of a challenging budget to begin with.
We can definitely flesh out those numbers and get you a good estimate. It's certainly not going to be perfect, but we can give you a good estimate of those hard costs, and then soft costs would be just what I mentioned rolled in, and those will be absorbed within the overall budget. But yes, we can bang out the Saturday, Sunday numbers and what that looks like.
Yeah, I guess what I would ask Audra and Scott of Iron is to give us a not to exceed number after you do that.
So that if I hear you correctly, Henry, it's a not to exceed number from estimated expense on the behalf of the city.
Yeah, on hard costs. I mean, I think the fact that people are going to be doing reviewing a plan or whatever, we're already funded for that. I think it's the extra ambulance, it's the extra police, it's whatever that isn't ordinarily in the course of business. How much are we looking to be on the hook for there, and to get some cap to that, so that we know that it's not crowding out other spending that we're going to be challenged to fund.
Okay. Counselor Cheney.
Mayor, I just want to say, as probably one of the oldest and grayest, I'm anxious to see this, but I'm also anxious to see what Henry suggested, a not to exceed number or something along that line. I just, if the manager can put together a good estimate between now and our next meeting, I would feel a lot more comfortable. But I want to reiterate, I'm looking forward to seeing this. I don't want us to get surprised. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Cheney. I think those are spot on. Counselor Hamel.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if Audra could make an effort with the state to check into state police helping out in this event. And also, what are the exact dates of this?
So yes, I can reach out to the state, and the exact dates, let me just double check. I apologize, it's not up in front of me, would be the 21st and 22nd of August. So packet pickup for the athletes would start on the 20th. So that would be after work hours from 5 to 7. And then the first event would be on that Saturday.
So I think we've, Councilor Hamel, we've had, as we mentioned last time, we've had a good discussion with the state about all the possibilities associated with it and their enthusiastic supporters. There's a difference between being an enthusiastic supporter and then being willing to share in the expense. So I think that's the next conversation. And I'm happy to assist Audra with that discussion, and maybe reaching out to the Commissioner of Safety as well as the Commissioner of Business and Economic Affairs to if I'm not mistaken, on a yearly basis, the Business and Economic Affairs has a JPP fund for programming and marketing, which they dedicate maybe a total of $30,000 to Laconia Motorcycle Week and its promotions and underwriting. So certainly going in and making a similar type request, both from BEA and maybe some personnel associated with state police, and giving us the backup that we may need here is really wise, and I'm happy to lead that.
Okay, thank you for that. But also, I'd like to see us check into, I'm going back to the EMS again, where that's our busy time of the year and we're kind of limited, about how that could involve mutual aid with the surrounding communities and what their thoughts are on that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. I'd forgotten that. I was wondering whether, I know the town of Guilford is enthused about bringing this back, and I'm wondering, I'm wondering about their level of commitment as far as their public resources to the success of this. In other words, I don't know whether they have 1 or 2 ambulances or more. I wouldn't believe they have more, but I'm wondering what they're willing to commit as far as help with police and maybe first responders of sorts that might be necessary. So
I think we need to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Sooner rather than later.
If I can jump in here. So I think what the discussion we had with Audra was the city would dedicate 1 specific ambulance for when the event came into Laconia. So the end of the bike ride and the run. So right now we have 3 physical ambulances that we own, and to staff all 3 would be 6 out of our 9 people. So we are never truly staffing all 3 ambulances necessarily, even though we have 3 in our fleet. So we would take 1 and dedicate it with 2 folks, not as part of our daily coverage, and have it available just for the race course. And then it would be up to Ironman to set up the cost in backfilling should that ambulance be called for an Ironman needed request for service. It would not be there for our 3rd ambulance to go somewhere else in Laconia. In that situation, we would rely on mutual aid, and we would make sure that we coordinated that during those time periods. Similar how Guilford would be doing it, because they would be manning, the first part for the swim and the bike ride out of Guilford. And then there's the bike ride going all the way down to Loudon and back, I believe. So there's
Yes.
certainly support from other departments all the way down 106, if you will. But we would have one dedicated ambulance strictly for the race, which would mean we would have the opportunity separate from that, with fully staffed in the fire department, to be operating 2 additional ambulance and have the backup of mutual aid.
Thank you, Scott. So, Audra, let me see if I can put a focus on this now. First and foremost, I'm enthused about the possibility of Ironman, Timberman coming and being at Laconia centric. I think it's exciting for our city. I think it's good for our local business community, and I think it's something that Ironman would be really happy to be able to partner with a city like Laconia and the surrounding areas. And I know you know that because you're a local resident. That being said, I think there's a possibility. I think the council might be in a position to support this endeavor and do it on your time frame, which would probably be the next city council meeting. But it's contingent on a couple of things that need to get done between now and then. So the fine point on this is first of all, I know that Scott will give us a rough estimate and probably a not to exceed number, so we can determine what type of cost the city will be looking at to support this, to be a good partner. Second of all, I think between now and then, we need to understand that you have reached out to Guilford and what their level of commitment is in supporting this. Second of all, and just as important, is what type of support is the state willing to give us as far as BEA, Business and Economic Affairs, promotion, or is there any JPP money there that's available to assist in this? And probably just as important is what role would the New Hampshire State Police be willing to play in helping support this endeavor as well, which would take the pressure off our local police department. Okay, and anything else there that you all can think of that needs to be tied up before we can get to a point where we can say yay or nay to this? Councilor Susie.
Just one other recommendation, Mr. Mayor and Audra, since you're talking to the state, ask the state about the National Guard medical units, because they spend a lot of weekends out working different areas, and then maybe they can help out there.
I think that's a good idea. Let's hope that we've gotten as much as the state vaccinated as possible at that point. I don't know if they have a role in that, but I think that's a great idea. Thanks, Councilor Susie.
They do, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Littman.
The National Guard's got a lot of roles there, doing the vaccination registration. They've got a big role, so I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I think it's worth checking, but I wouldn't count on it. They've been playing a big role.
Thank you, Councilor Littman. Is there anything else that you think you need for information before you can make an informed vote on this, Councilor Littman?
I just, how does it fit into the overall 22 budget? Is I guess the other thing we need from Scott Myers.
Thank you. Councilor Hamel.
Yes. Also, like what Councilor Susie brought up, you may want to check with the industrial park owners there for the parking. That should be one of the things that should be found out very soon also for that. Other than that, I can't think of much more to ask, but I thank everybody.
But that should give you a comfort level to say yay or nay when the vote comes up in next meeting.
Yeah, we'll see where the numbers come and what help the other places are willing to do. If the state's willing to help out with the police protection and all that, then that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
All the questions that were asked tonight, I'll be looking forward to an answer to.
Thank you, Councilor Hamel. Looking at my fellow councilors, anything that you think of as a loose end that should be cleared up between now and then that would allow you to make an informed decision in, one way or the other? All right. Audra, is there something that you need from the city right now as far as information or support or something, so we can, I really want to bring this to a head at our next meeting and bring it up for a vote and I want to make sure everybody's got all the information and data they need to make this decision.
No, I'm set. I have my list of things that I need to go after, and then I look forward to putting together the rough numbers, and then we'll connect at the next meeting. Scott.
Thank you.
Mayor, I do have one other thing.
Yes, Councilor Hamel.
If you're going to use O-Pee-Chee Park, the field and all that there, do you know what is going to be on it? Is there vehicles, tents, those kinds of things? Because that whole field is irrigated. And you probably have to get with Parks and Rec to have a mark out where the irrigation
Absolutely.
system is. We spent a lot of money on that. And we don't want holes through it.
No, absolutely. And we've done that in other markets too. So of course, we'll be very respectful, and it will be a non-issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Sousa, yes. We can't hear you.
When you first made the original presentation, you said it was a 3-year commitment. Is that what this is?
That's what we're looking for. Yes.
I just want to clarify that. That's all. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. If there are no other questions or comments or concerns at this point, we all know what needs to get done, what information we all need between now and then. And certainly the city stands ready and willing to assist in any way that we can to bring it to the council at the next meeting for a vote. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It was nice to see everybody, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Audra.
Bye.
Moving right along now to the mayor's report under number 15. I will forego any comments I may have tonight and open it up to fellow councilors if move right into number 16, which would be the council comments. Tony, where's the cat? Seeing no other council comments tonight, we moved this up on the calendar because everybody had something to say and they ran out of energy at the end of the meeting. So here we are right in the thick of it. And I don't have any comments. Okay. All right. We'll leave it there for a few more weeks and see how it works. Let's move along to number 17, which is the committee reports. Do we have any committee reports this evening? Seeing no hands, how about liaison reports? Do we have any liaison reports this evening? Seeing none. Right now under 19, this is the citizens' request to comment on current agenda items. If there's any citizens who are tuned in this evening and would like to speak or address any of the issues on tonight's agenda, now would be the appropriate time. I'll wait on your cue, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor, Charlie St. Clair has raised his hand.
All right. Welcome, Charlie.
Good evening, everybody. I just very quickly want to say I'm thrilled that it appears that we're moving forward, or you're moving forward with the Iron Man, Timberman activities. As a merchant and a resident, I think any more activities we can get in the downtown area and just to affect the whole city is a great thing. So that's all I want to say. I think it's great. And I know I'm not alone feeling that way too. I know you guys are going to do your due diligence on everything, and including the city manager. So that's all. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charlie.
Nice
Thank you,
try.
Charlie.
Mayor Will Infantine has raised his hand.
Yes, Mr. Infantine. Is that Representative Infantine?
Okay. Little technical glitch here. Because of the version of Zoom he's using, we're going to promote him to a panelist so he can talk.
Okay. Welcome, Mr. Infantine. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mayor Hosmer. Thank you, Council. Is this the appropriate time to speak on the speed limit of Weirs Boulevard?
Yes, I believe it is still on. It's been tabled, so it is on the agenda. I guess now would be as good a time as any, I think.
All right, well, thank you. I've been coming up to Laconia and Weirs Beach for probably the last 45 years of my life, recently purchasing a home at 937 Weirs Boulevard. And I had contacted Councilman Felch about the speed limits. We'd had an incident, serious car accident over by Lucalani's ice cream shop. And it really has nothing to do more than the topography. When you come down the hill going north, you come flying down the hill just from momentum by Burt's Knoll Motel, and then it opens up and you're going ahead, great head of speed around a kind of a blind corner. On the other way, you're coming from the Weirs Beach where it's a little congested. You go past Naswa, you go up to another pinnacle of a hill, and then you come right down and you have a large straightaway going downhill. So whether it be a tractor trailer or even some of the fire trucks not on a call, the speed right there in that corner is excessive. It was when we asked the police department to put one of those signs up that flashes your speed, it was amazing the difference between the speeds. I'd say most people travel at that speed around 45 or 50 in that area. So I appreciate Councilman Felch coming out and meeting with me and looking at the situation. I know he had an accident where he was rear-ended there a number of years ago, somewhere in the same area. So we are a condominium association, the St. Moritz Association. I won't speak for anybody else, but I would really like to see that the board approve the reduction of the speed limit just in an additional area there.
Thanks very much, Mr. Infantine.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate you joining us. Any other comments on current agenda items this evening?
Mr. Mayor, Jason Cooper has raised his hand.
Welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, my name is Jason Cooper, and I actually am a resident with Will at St. Moritz at 937 Weirs Boulevard. My wife and I have been owners there for 15 years. I actually happen to be the president of the association and probably speak for most of the residents there. And Will is absolutely right that the speed limit down there has been dangerous for many years. And it's not really necessarily the speed limit, it's the lack of observation by cars coming around our sharp corners. So not only is there the ice cream shop across the street where many children from our association go down to frequent on a regular basis, obviously mostly accompanied by adults, but it doesn't really matter if the cars aren't slowing down when you want to cross the street. So we actually did ask on multiple occasions, and the police force in Laconia has been great. The last couple summers, they've stationed some people down there to do some traffic enforcement, as well as this year they put a speed limit sign, or the flashing signs down there, but it truly did not do as much as we had anticipated. And in fact, it, that crash that Will is speaking of this past summer was right around the same time as that came in. And being there for 15 years, I've seen several crashes down there, and I'm sure you all have heard about them, if not, directly, indirectly. So it's just one of those things where, for the sake of not just our kids, but there are many associations around there, from Four Seasons that has, dozens and dozens and dozens of occupants up there that cross to their boats and to their beach. We have a beach across the street, and again, the ice cream shop. So the consideration to lower it to 25 miles an hour with some heavier signage would be fantastic. And obviously it would be in the best interest of the town of Laconia and the safety of all the citizens and all of us, obviously the residents. So thank you for your consideration. That's all I have.
Thanks for taking time to join us, Mr. Cooper. We appreciate your input.
My pleasure.
Mayor, no one else has raised their hand.
Thanks very much, Mr. Smith. Moving on to number 20, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you have two reports that are included in your agenda packet for this evening. The first one is the projects update. It's a little thin on meat on the bone in most areas just because it's winter and there's a lot of planning going on. So that's what we are doing with our road projects for 2021. We are doing some of the work with the water line cross-country project, if you will, out in the Lakeport area as a part of the larger water sewer drainage. We're finalizing the bid package on that, and that'll be going out late winter for spring construction out there. So those are the big ones in the project. On the monthly economic development report, you can see that we've had a little bit of an uptick in unemployment. Again, some of this may be seasonally. We're looking at the November number at this point as compared to October of 2020 as the most recent data. A little bit seasonally, probably a little bit coming into the resurgence of COVID and things kind of quieting down and taking a pause in terms of some of the businesses reopening and the levels. So we'll continue to monitor that. We know it was a bit of a rough Thanksgiving through Hanukkah, through Christmas, through New Year's season, and a few weeks after that, where there's been a large uptick in cases of COVID and hospitalizations. We hopefully are starting to see a little bit of a plateau on that rate now. I know Massachusetts, our neighbor to the south, has been hard hit, but they've also kind of seen the plateau, and they're further behind where we are as far as reopening and capacity levels and those types of things. But they are at the point where they're starting to lift some of their more stringent restrictions and going forward. So baby steps. Certainly the vaccine rolling out into our high-risk populations and some of the assisted living and nursing home care facilities rolling out right now with the registrations to the populations of 65 and older, and those who may have a medical situation younger will certainly help. It is not going to be just the logistics. It's not going to be a quick rollout and a quick fix. The number of doses that are coming in, the ability to register people seems to have gone well. It's not so much, as I've heard Perry Plummer, who's overseeing the distribution, it's not so much about getting the needles in the arms. It's more about getting some of the vaccines into the state. New Hampshire and most New England states have been doing a great job. I know Councilor Lippman alluded to National Guard. Guardsmen are called up on a number of fronts, distributing PPE early on, working at the vaccine locations, being trained, working the 211 call center right now. There are literally hundreds of guards, men and women, who are supporting the effort, along with a large number of state employees across all departments, our regional partners in the Partnership for Public Health, and obviously our local officials in not only Laconia, but across the state. So baby steps, but it still is going to be a challenge to get us back to some sense of normalcy. And I think some of the unemployment rates are going to reflect that for a little bit further until we get to a better place. But we do see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to go over one more report that I emailed you all earlier today. It was at a request of the council if we could help start to itemize and show what our COVID expenses are. So Glenn Smith, our finance director, has compiled a list of expenses that ran from roughly the middle of March. So we called it from March through December 2020 year end. We've broken it down by departments, but within those departments, there is some overlap. So for instance, early on within the fire department, they had access and were purchasing the personal protection equipment, the PPE, and distributing it to a number of departments, around the city. So everything doesn't necessarily line up in a neat silo, whether it was police, fire, recreation facilities, DPW, library, but we have captured all the cost, and Glenn and his team and the team of department heads actually reporting it out have done a great job. So everything that you see on this sheet, including a few areas that were kind of miscellaneous under other, includes overtime, Family Medical Leave Act where it was appropriate, emergency sick leave, PPE, other supplies dealing with getting buildings ready for reopening. So that might be plexiglass or hand sanitizer or additional pens, the cost of sanitizing buildings and vehicles more frequently, quarantine cost if we ran across those, which we did, of having to have people quarantine. It also dealt with a lot of technology and having people work remotely from home, setting up remote meetings for all our various, councils, boards, commissions. Some items that were not in the budget that we certainly did not anticipate when we adopted the budget a year ago, needing beach attendants and extra police detail for controlling populations at the beach, having a greeter established in the lobby in City Hall to help keep people distanced but facilitate what they needed to be doing. Again, some extension on people's ability to pay bills, whether it was property taxes or water billing, accommodations, those types of things. So all of that put together, separate from some of the very specific targeted programs, which I'll mention in a second, that total I just mentioned, everything was about $215,000. Additionally, as has been reported out to the council, there were some targeted reimbursements, whether it was the first responder stipend program that went for all first responders for a period of late spring through the summer, whether it was the election grant program to assist with having enough workers and enough PPE at all the voting locations so we could hold not only the primary but the general election safely. Obviously the additional mail-in for absentee ballots and those costs as well. And the number I mentioned to you, the $215,000, also does not include any direct reimbursement in an agreement that we have specific to Laconia and the state for police detail that we provide at the Doobie Building when there are occupants up at the Doobie Building. So we've gotten reimbursements from all of those specific siloed programs, if you will. Some might still be in the works, but it's been regular and steady, and we're counting on it. On the original dollar amount that I listed going back to March, some of that was reimbursable through Gopher, through the state administered program of federal dollars. They have been very responsive in getting reimbursements out to this, and then others that maybe prioritize the need first, that go through FEMA at a 75% level reimbursement. So collectively, with all of our reimbursement submittals, we have actually exceeded our true to date hard cost on our reimbursements, and part of that was through the Gopher program in the summer, in the July-August timeframe, made an adjustment to reimbursements, especially in public safety officials. Early on, the public safety officials needed to devote all of their time specifically to COVID, and that was difficult for a lot of communities to quantify, because any public safety employee on any given shift at any time may be dealing with COVID, but they weren't necessarily specifically targeted to focusing on COVID for the entire length of their shift. So they reworded some of the conditions on that and said anyone who's dealing with public safety, as long as they're available to respond for COVID, is a covered expense. So we have exhausted our reimbursement from the Gopher program. That amount does exceed what our expenses are at the moment, but we know that we're still incurring those expenses every month going forward. It's more PPE, it's sanitizing vehicles, ambulances, buildings. It's if people are exposed to somebody needs to quarantine, job related, those types of things are still coming up. But overall, the Gopher program, administered through the state, has been excellent, really been excellent. A lot of the targeted siloed programs also very strong. FEMA is a smaller reimbursement for us right now. We're kind of grouping that together a couple of months at a time because it's not big dollars. So rather than try to do a lot of baby submittals, we're grouping that. But again, Glenn and his team in finance, all department heads, all departments across the city have really done a great job. And as the mayor mentioned, we're focusing on what a next round of stimulus package may look like. I know both senators and our Congressman Pappas had indicated there was a little disappointment that there wasn't some money going directly to states or municipalities, especially in backfilling some of the revenues in the compromise that did come out in December. And I know at least our federal delegation is all making that a priority. Going forward, I have shared with them on a number of conference calls that that's welcomed, but we also need to have a lot of flexibility with it because there's a lot of unknowns that we can't identify right now. We know that motor vehicles have been strong, but if this continues on, what will that look like? We know there's been a lot of protections in place on the welfare end of it with the stay of people being evicted from homes or utilities being turned off. When some of those protections get lifted, what does our city's welfare cost look like? We had a strong property tax collection in the December round, but what does it look like come June when some of the support programs on stimulus checks or unemployment or people not being able to get back to full employment come in? So we've asked for whatever may come to the state or the local level to have flexibility built in. And in our case, and hopefully a lot of communities' cases, the ability to carry that forward into the next fiscal year. We obviously know that this is not going to have a clean cutoff date on June 30th of this year necessarily. So to have flexibility to carry some dollars forward for the remainder of this calendar year. So I can stop there and take any questions anyone may have on any of the information.
Any questions from councilors? Councilor Hamel.
Yes, not a question, but I want to thank Glenn and Scott for putting this together for us. I asked for this, and I appreciate it a lot, Scott. And you letting us know what the revenues were to help offset this. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate the work there.
And Glenn did a great job as well.
Be remiss not to thank Glenn. His picture's not there, so sometimes it's easy to forget Glenn. Thank you. Moving along to new business. Under 21A, which is the first reading of Resolution 2021-02, relative to authorizing the city manager to accept donated funds on behalf of the city. It's requested that the council vote to accept as a gift the existing funds from the terminating association and dedicate the funds to the special revenue fund set up to be solely used by the Weirs Community Park House Committee. These funds will be used to maintain and operate the Weirs Community Center, Park House, as well as any capital improvements to the Weirs Community Park. The committee will seek special authority from the city council to expend funds from the special revenue fund for any charitable endeavors. The amount gifted to the city for the special revenue fund will be an amount not to exceed $48,000. There's no additional fiscal impact on the city. Staff recommendation is the Park and Recs Commission Department recommends the council accept the gifted money to be placed into the special revenue account. This report was submitted by Amy Lovisek, the Director of Recreation and Facilities. Scott, would you just give us a quick overview after I've read that? I mean, this just seems to be, since we've sent up the new entity, just gives us the ability to move the funds from one entity to the new entity.
That's exactly it, Mr. Mayor. So just in the order of our agenda, this being new business is coming first. So this is being moved to a public hearing in 2 weeks. We didn't do this in conjunction with what you're taking up under unfinished business, which is to set up the special revenue account, which you moved to a public hearing from the meeting 2 weeks ago. You held that public hearing tonight. So we didn't want to presume that you would automatically do that. This will go to a public hearing. The dollars that are currently with the association will get transferred over under the city. Following up on what Councilor Lippman had asked, I did check with legal counsel. This is the proper way for the city to be handling this, so there's no repercussions there. And our legal counsel probably put together a very detailed 10-paragraph what the current association should do in reporting out to the Secretary of State's office and the IRS on their disbandment and how they've dispersed the final funds. So a very detailed sheet went to Amy as our recreation director to get to that association so that they can make sure that they're disbanding it again, both with the state and the federal level in a proper manner.
Thank you. So moving along, I'll be looking for our first motion, which would be a move to waive a reading of Resolution 2021-02 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yeah.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
Thank you.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Second motion would be looking for someone to move a first reading of Resolution 2021-02 relative to authorizing the city manager to accept donated funds on behalf of the city. So made by Councilor Haynes, seconded by Councilor Felch. I'd ask further discussion. Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, I'd be looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on February 8th, 2021 during the regular council meeting to gather public input prior to adoption. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Susie. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you, councilors. Moving along now to unfinished business. Number 22, which is the second reading of Resolution 2021-01 relative to authorizing the formation of a Weirs Community Park Special Revenue Fund. At the January 11th, 2021 council meeting, the council approved the formation of a Weirs Community Park Committee. The Park House Committee will be overseen by the Parks and Recreation Commission, and they will be responsible for day-to-day operations of the Park House. The purpose of the committee will be to aid the Parks and Recreation Department in equipping, maintaining, and operating the Park House to provide a recreational and educational facilities to the children of the area and the general community. Special revenue fund to be established for the committee will be solely used for the maintenance and operation of the Park House and the Weirs Community Park itself. The committee will seek special authority from the City Council to expend funds from the Special Revenue Fund for any charitable endeavors. RSA 47:1-C authorizes the City Council to establish a special revenue fund, restricting revenues from a specific source to expenditures for a specific purpose. This process was done in 2004 for Tardif and Levitt Park committees, and it has worked out well. There'll be no additional fiscal impact on the city. This report was submitted by Amy Lobisek, Director of Recreation and Facilities. I'll be looking for 3 motions here. The first one is to move a reading of Resolution 2021-01 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Next, to be looking for to move a second reading of Resolution 2021-01 relative to the establishment of a Weirs Community Park House and Special Revenue Fund. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Hamel. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
yes,
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, I'll be looking for a motion to move to approve Resolution 2021-01 relative to the establishment of a Weirs Community Parkhouse Special Revenue Fund. So made by Councillor Phelps, seconded by Councillor Cheney. Any further discussions? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Cheney,
Yes.
Councillor Susie,
Yes.
Councillor Whitman,
Yes.
Councillor Haynes,
Yes.
Councillor Hamel,
Yes.
Councillor Phelps.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Thank you very much, councilors. Moving along to an item we had tabled at the January 11th, 2021 council meeting is the request to lower the speed limit on Weirs Boulevard near 937 Weirs Boulevard. I know we had made a request to get some data back from the police department on any traffic analysis. Mr. Myers, have we received that by any chance?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I sent an email out to the council after the meeting 2 weeks ago. We put out the electronic flashing board that showed your speed, but we did not put out what is referred to as the stat pack, which compiles the data and gives you a report on that. So we do not have that for that specific location. It's certainly something that could be put out now, but we're not sure the parallel of the stat pack being out in January versus in one of the summer months, what that may show you. And just one point of clarification, I know one of the speakers had mentioned he wanted you to support dropping the speed limit to 25. The speed limit is currently 35, and what was before you was to drop it to 30. So I just want to make sure everyone's clear that if you do take action on this, it's dropping from 35 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour.
Thank you. I also think putting a stack pack out there in the inclement weather probably may not be the wisest thing to do either. So I think absent any additional information, I'd be inclined to keep it on the table until we have an opportunity to get some additional data to help us make a decision, unless someone feels differently and wants to move it off the table. Councillor Felch.
Yeah, I sent an email out to the councilors. I don't know if it went to you. We're only changing the speed limit a little over 1/10 of a mile. It's before the corner instead of after the corner. So you come around that corner and then it's 30. So we're just changing it just before the corner, which makes more sense. So yeah, I'd like to take it off the table.
So this is non-debatable, I think, but it's a motion made by Councillor Felch to take this item off the table. Is there a second? Second from Councillor Cheney. Is there further discussion? I don't know if there's discussion on this. I guess it just goes to a vote. Is that correct? So I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Cheney,
Yes.
Councillor Susie,
Yes.
Councillor Littman,
Yes.
Councillor Haynes,
Yes.
Councillor Hamel,
Yes.
Councillor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. The motion passes. So on the table right now, or off the table actually, and before the council is the residents' request to lower the speed limit on Weirs Boulevard near 937 Weirs Boulevard and reduce the speed limit on Weirs Boulevard.
Motion.
So Councillor Felch, I take it that you would be making a motion to move this item to actually lower the speed limit, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. And is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Cheney. Is there further discussion on this at this point? Councillor Hamel.
Yes, if we're going to do this, I'm wondering if we could do something similar to what we did on the corners of Scenic Road by having LED flashes on the sign. If it's going to be at the corner, I think it would be a good idea. It would be much more noticeable. If you're already going around the corner, you're not looking at the signs anyway. So I was wondering if that's a possibility that we could do that. It would make the sign much more noticeable than just it sitting there.
I'm
Councillor
okay with
Felch.
I'm okay with that amendment. We move the sign and put flashing lights on it. I think that's a good idea.
Scott, the cost of putting flashing sign in there, what's the rough cost on those flashers? Solar powered, I think, right?
Yeah, I'd be guessing off the top of my head, but I believe that Wes Anderson, our Public Works Director, is with us. So Wes, if you want to raise your hand, and at least if you can give us a ballpark, and Glenn, if you can bring Wes forward, that would be great.
I don't remember exactly, but I think it was around 1,200 a sign.
Sounds about right, based on my recollection of it. How many signs would be needed in this area if you can say, Wes, for what?
You actually only need the one on the northbound side, because the one on the southbound side, you're just holding the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit until after the corner and then raising it to 35.
Yep.
Any further discussion on this motion that's on the table right now?
Just to clarify, Mayor, is this on the table, it's 30 miles an hour, is that right?
Correct.
That's correct. Counselor Haynes, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I don't want to muddy the water, but there's been talk about bike paths, and if the construction of that road, I'm just wondering, I have two things. I'm just wondering if it'd be smart just to make it 30 miles an hour, period, once you hit the boulevard till you get to the rotary. Second of all, my lack of knowledge, I'm just wondering why this didn't go to the Highway Safety Committee to have a discussion with them and just not us weighing in on the situation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Felch.
And I can't answer why it did not. I did sit down with Wes Anderson and the chief of police, and they were both in favor of changing it. And like I said, it's only a little over a tenth of a mile that we're moving the sign back.
Counselor Susie.
I agree with Counselor Hayes. If we're gonna do it for just a tenth of a mile, might as well do it for the boulevard. But the rest of the boulevard is in the same situation as far as the density of the population and the people going back and forth across that road. Everybody goes across the road to go to the other side, get on their boats or something else like that. And as far as enforcement, that's what this all comes right down to. I'd still like to see the stat pack up there someday.
Counselor Felch.
So I think part of this is because of sight lines. You're coming around that corner and you have the ice cream place and the condos where people are stopping and turning and people crossing right there on the corner. I'd like to get this to go through and then maybe we can discuss the rest of the road.
Well, I don't, unless there's an amendment on the table to do the whole road, that's one thing, but that's not the motion that's on the table or on the floor right now.
Right.
What, instead of doing this, does it make any sense to just seek to have better enforcement of the speed limit? Or even if we enforce the speed limit at 35, it is still presumed to be dangerous?
Well, I think because of sight lines, it is dangerous. I mean, I went up and looked at it. Like I said, Chief of Police and Wes Anderson agree that it should be changed because of sight lines.
And are we setting the proper precedent here too by doing this without a further public hearing on this? Or do you think this is adequate? I'd look to you on this, Scott. Have we opened this up to the public enough to weigh in on it?
I believe for the stretch that you're talking of, absolutely. It's been published on the agenda twice now, and you certainly had people call in on that. I would say to go anything further and do it the entire length of the boulevard, you would want to make that a separate item on a new agenda so that people were aware of it.
Sure. Councilor Cheney, did I see your hand raised? Yes.
Yes, I would comment that lowering the speed limit, and I think Councilman Hamel's idea of adding flashing lights is a good suggestion. But without enforcement, this isn't going to work as well as folks are hoping it will. We created a traffic unit last year, and I hope we can talk to the chief about the traffic unit, spending some time there. I don't think they necessarily need to ticket everybody, but they certainly could stop a few people and remind them that the speed limit's changed. And I think it'd be interesting to see what the data pack comes up with after the new speed limit's been posted and some enforcement has been done. But without enforcement, this is a waste of money. Thank you.
Counselor Felch.
So yes, I just got a message from Chief Canfield, and he concurs with the sign and the lights. He agrees with all of that. So,
Counselor Hamel.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Council Cheney also on that. You could put it 5 miles an hour, and if they're not out there patrolling and stopping people, then it is a waste of money. So it's my thought.
Any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor right now? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Whitman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. That's a motion and amendment, right? This is now going to be, speed limit's going to be adjusted approximately 1/10, and there's also part of that motion is to put the flashing speed limit in there, correct?
Yeah, yes, I added that.
Thank you. All right, so moving along in the agenda, that would conclude what's on our agenda tonight. I'm going to make a request a motion to go into non-public session under 91A, specifically to real estate transactions, or when we return from the non-public session, it will only be to adjourn. There'll be no new business taken up, nor will there be any presentations or motions on the table. So that being said, I'd be looking, remember now we have a second login for a Zoom room.
Trying to find it.
All right. We'll just appoint you to a couple more committees, Counselor Susie, before you get in there. No, so right now I'll be looking for a motion to go into non-public session in a second. So made by Counselor Hamel.
Mr. Mayor, if you could read the specifics portion of
I had it.
for us, just.
Oh, yeah. I thought I didn't have it, but I do. I'm happy to do that. Go ahead.
I just want to make sure we're going in under the proper noticing.
Scott, can you tell me, you sent that out already, right? Or did it come from Cheryl?
I sent it to you this afternoon. I can send it to you again right now.
I'll find it.
So to tighten this up a little bit more, be looking for a motion to go into non-public session according to RSA 91-A:3, Roman 2, parentheses, small d. Consideration of the acquisition, sale, or lease of real or personal property which, if discussed in public, would likely benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the general community. Thank you. So we're looking for a motion. Counselor Haynes, seconded by Counselor Littman. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll to go into non-public session.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
That's 6 votes in the affirmative. We'll now go into non-public session.
need several more people to come back.
I can't just be the two of us here. Tony's here.
Council Susie's on, Buschini's on.
And we have Councilor Hayes is here with me. Haynes.
Okay. So we have present Councilors Felch, Cheney, Haynes, Littman, Susie. We have a quorum, and I would like to adjourn the city council meeting of January 25th, 2021 at 9:42.
I think you want to seal the minutes first.
Oh, yeah, we got to seal the minutes. Make a motion to, someone want to make the motion to seal the minutes for 6 months? So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any discussion? Ask for a roll call.
Counselor Cheney,
Yes.
Counselor Susie,
Yes.
Counselor Littman,
Yes.
Counselor Haynes.
Yes.
If the minutes can reflect that Counselor Hamel is joined, Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Felch,
Yes.
6 out.
6 votes in the affirmative, minutes sealed for 6 months. Now I'd like to declare the city council meeting January 25th, 2021 adjourned at 9:43 PM.
Thank you, everybody.
Night.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to know if I'm going